to another episode of Det Nation. We have a Aussie edition of Det Nation here today. She's a Christian. She's within a stone throw of me. She's a YouTube personality. She's pretty big. It's dear Beltran. How are you, dear?
I'm not that big, but I'm well, thank you.
Yeah, that's good. No, it's a pleasure to have you on the show because we want to talk Christianity. Christianity is interesting. I have lots of transhumanist Christians on here, mainly Mormon transhumanists, but they come from far and wide across the spectrum. I'm wondering, though, about traditional Christianity. And the reason I'm wondering about traditional Christianity is because I was raised Jehovah's Witness. Ooh. So I was born into that. I can't change it. I can't stop whatever happened there. So I have a very deformed, quite a different view of Christianity to what mainstream Christians are and also what transhumanist Christians are. So I'm thinking, let's talk to somebody who at least pretends, but I know you don't pretend. You are a mainstream Christian advocate. So let's talk to somebody who's in the realm of mainstream Christianity. So welcome to Det Nation and let's talk Christianity, dear Beltran. So, first question. How did you get into Christianity? Are you just born into it? Are you raised into it? Did you find, is it your part of your cultural experience, part of your, what was the roots that led to you to becoming a Christian?
Yeah, I was raised in it. My mother and my father were both Catholic. My father was attending a very Brethren Christian church. Brethren meaning extremely old-fashioned, no instruments were played, very old hymns sung, silence, and all that kind of thing. And so then my mother, for about 6 years of her life, 6 years of my life as a child was spent, I didn't know at the time, with my mum challenging the church, challenging them, saying, no, we have to pray to Mary, we have to do this, we have to go to confession and all these things. But eventually she realized that that's incorrect. The Catholic Church isn't biblical, at least at some capacity. And so she became a Christian, and then I was raised in it. And then obviously I have a mind of my own. I'm an adult. I'm in my early 30s.
Great.
I can make my own decisions. And so for a long time, whilst my faith was always there, I did sort of wander about other things, and I strayed from the path, and I've chosen to pick it up.
When you say you strayed from the path, what does that mean? You engaged in critical thinking, or does it mean you were exposed to new ideas, or you joined another religion? What does that mean, strayed from the path?
Strayed from the path meaning I disregarded God for a number of years. He was still there, like in my heart. I still didn't do things because I felt too wrong to try doing all these other things like drugs or whatever. But I stray from the path just means that. It doesn't for me mean that, engaging in critical thinking is highly encouraged in Christianity. It's actually not something that you're not allowed to do. Whereas I'm aware that with certain people who happen to be Mormon or other faiths, that looking into alternative facts, as they would probably label it, is sort of against their better judgment. But no, it's a good thing for me. Like, I was watching a lot of YouTube when I was in my teens out of high school, and I was watching atheist content. I wanted to see it, and it only actually strengthened my faith.
Yeah, atheist content can be very aggressive.
It can.
So one of the biggest atheist YouTubers out there is probably The Amazing Atheist, right? And that guy is very aggressive, very angry. He's very death cultish. He's part of the death industry, and Det Nation is all about putting death out of business, and that's what we're here to do. We're here to fight the fossil fuel industry, to fight the death industry. And alleviate a lot of the issues and pressures that compound and leave people sort of in sorrow and woe. But apart from that, no, this is an interesting thought. So who is God? Because this is a question that eats away at me, because God is many things to many different people all across time.
Yes.
And he changes. And one minute his gender matters, it's a female, it's a male, then gender doesn't matter, his sex matters and it doesn't matter. To you, who is this God character that you're describing? Why is that important, if at all?
God is the great comforter. He is your father. He is my creator. He is my savior. And the God of the Bible is God. Not the God of the Jehovah's Witnesses or any other faith. The God of the Bible specifically. That's the book. That's the doctrine that Christians live by.
Yeah. Okay. So the Bible is it, and you know the Bible's an interesting document because it comes from essentially the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy,
Joshua, Judges,
First
That's
Kings,
the
Second
Tanakh.
Kings. Yeah, we know them.
You know them.
Yeah. I was raised JW. We have to learn all that stuff. I know it back to front, but you know, so the first 5 books are very fundamental because that comes from Abraham. Abraham's basically spawned the 3 big, well, not the 3 big ones, but certainly Christianity and Islam because out of the Yahweh monotheistic conception, right?
Yeah.
And then a spin-off as well, Judaism, which is also rather large. Not large, but influential.
I know what you mean.
So, you know, you say all these things about God, but why is the God of the Bible the only important factor? Why isn't Ra a factor? Why isn't any of these other myriad of gods? Why isn't Shiva a factor? Why isn't Muhammad why isn't
Allah
a factor? Why isn't any of these other gods a factor? You know, why isn't Pluto a thing anymore? What happened to Neptune?
I can answer that, but I don't know how. I don't know whether you will buy the answer because some people go, oh, that's a cop-out or whatever. But the answer to that question is that in Christianity, it's the only faith that exists where you don't have to work your way to get into heaven. If you're a Catholic, you need to do a bunch of Hail Marys and you need to do something with the rosaries, and some really obsessive Catholics, like the guy in that movie, The Da Vinci Code, like whips himself on the back, like self-inflicted punishment. In the Philippines, Catholics,
Yeah, they go mad. They go nuts.
Yeah, they sacrifice themselves on the cross. In Islam, again, you have to do the works to get into heaven. Part of that is considered jihad. In Mormonism, you have to you're not allowed to drink tea. These are
coffee, tea. Yeah, whole regimen.
It's a huge regimen, as you said. It's a huge undertaking. Whereas in Christianity, the atonement, the sacrifice has already been made. You have salvation through that sacrifice.
Yeah,
that's literally the difference.
Yeah.
You have salvation and you have to do nothing but accept the gift.
Yeah, and there is this argument of faith through Jesus' work. So Jesus did the work, and so but you know, why then is Christianity so you know, like, why does Christianity need to, like, the idea of hell, right? So the idea of hell is pretty bad when you think about it.
Yes.
Hell for a Mormon is basically there's a tiers of heaven and stuff, and there's basically
3 heavens, 3 hells.
Something like that, and
it's called the outer space, or the dark place.
Yeah. So it's, and then, you know, traditional Catholic hell is pretty bad. I mean, that's an eternity, which is a heck of a long time.
And they also have limbo and other weird things.
Purgatory,
which doesn't exist.
Yeah, a whole bunch of others. I mean, we're talking about eternity and hellfire, fire, essentially for, you know, if you lied, or if you cheated on your work time, or if you cursed God because your child died, or you got cancer and you were upset. I mean, you know, there's a whole bunch of reasons why you got angry and you disobeyed one of God's myriad of laws. Hellfire is a pretty bad idea. It's a pretty awful idea. Now, why would somebody, because in Christianity, I mean, if you don't know about it and you're given redemption because Jesus did it, I mean, why spread that word? I mean, what's the point of spreading the word of Christianity?
What's the point of spreading the gospel?
Yeah,
so that people don't so that people don't live a life without knowing that they have salvation and that they don't have to die and enter that dark place where they can end up in heaven.
Yeah, but is it predicated on the fact that you'd have to know that you're sinning against Yahweh? So all these Aztecs that were living for hundreds of years.
Are you talking about my
years,
people?
the Mayans, the Aztecs,
Yeah.
the indigenous tribes that we still haven't contacted. I mean, are they all going to hell?
Okay, so that's an interesting question because I've heard it before. Someone said to someone, Ray Comfort is like one of my favorite YouTube channels, and someone said to him while he was street preaching, "What about the tribal people, the people who are in the tribes, who have never had the gospel? Missionaries have never had the opportunity to go to that particular tribe and spread the gospel so that they can go to heaven." But there's a verse in the Bible, and I'm not a biblical Christian, as in obviously I am, but like I don't know the Bible off by heart like Christopher Short is. But the way it is being explained to me is that you can't look at the world like in the confines of human space, in the confines of what we understand. We know that everything has a maker. Like, this is a microphone, someone made it. This is a phone, someone made it. Like, we know that everything has a creator.
Yep.
So there's an element of spiritual logic that comes into play there. These people who are tribal or whatever, these Aztecs, they know, we have a conscience. We have an ability to understand right and wrong, even though consensus and human mainstream stupidity does sort of falter and tempt us into stupid things like legalizing abortion to 9 months. But basically my point is that it is imprinted in us at some capacity that there is a God. It's just unusual for those who choose to walk away from it. So these tribal people at some capacity could look at the stars and be like, someone said that when you look at the stars, there is the story of the cross there. But anyway, I know I'm really grasping at straws because I can't answer this question I'm still sort of a baby Christian.
Yeah. No, it's okay.
That's the best way I can answer that question.
I mean, Christianity
with a lot of ums and ahs.
It seems kind of cruel to me that that Christianity has this embedded in it that it's go forth, be fruitful, multiply, spread the word across the globe. But once you find out, you're trapped between either accepting Jesus or going to hell. It feels like
that's true.
It kind of feels like a bad dichotomy, and I know
the dichotomy is there because there's good and evil. If you choose to go your own way, then go for it.
So
that's the point of free will.
But if you never knew in the first place, I mean, you would be much better off. But so this is what I wanted to get to a point is what was God thinking when He created anything at all? Okay, so hypothetically, there's a God, is a man or a whatever, a man, let's say a man, he sits on a big divine being, sits on a throne up there in heaven, and he's always been there. I mean, space, time, reality,
yes.
He sits outside of it.
I am that I am.
Yeah, and it's just, for some reason, he's always been there. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to create people on a planet in a little universe with a whole bunch of forces and trauma.
He didn't create the forces.
Oh no, that was the Garden of Eden. But he tempted them in the Garden of Eden, right?
No, he didn't.
He put the tree of knowledge in the middle of the garden. That was the whole sin.
Yeah, I wouldn't call that a tempt. I would call that a test.
Test, yeah,
Satan,
sure. But what's wrong with knowledge? What's wrong with knowledge? Why is knowledge such a forbidden fruit? Well,
yeah, that's a good question. And actually, The Amazing Atheist, that was one of the very first videos I saw of his. The Amazing Atheist said that, and it was also this guy named Dusty, I think.
It's not the Dusty Bogan, is it?
No, the Dusty Bogan. No, this guy he's old, but he's like Dusty. Anyway, he's a very militant, angry Christian, and then Jacqueline Glenn. Jacqueline Glenn, I still watch her today because I don't mind her. Yeah, and so look, I think the answer to that question is that there's nothing wrong with having knowledge or acquiring it, hence free will still existed then. But the point was that God says something is wrong to do. You either obey or you don't obey.
But
they
so
chose to not obey.
So what God's plan originally was to let
a nice vegan society.
Adam and Eve run around naked in the garden,
having sex, having fun. It sounds amazing.
As zombies. right?
No, they
Wait,
hadn't.
but they're not allowed to acquire knowledge.
Adam-
Because
that's
one of
not
the big
true, though.
one of the things
That's
is
not
like
true.
he hid for like 3 days from God because he realized he was naked and he was like, you're hiding in the garden, you know?
Yeah, after the knowledge. But
Yeah.
that doesn't mean he didn't already acquire knowledge. Adam had to name every single animal that ever existed on. Why are you smiling? Every single animal. Like, there was intelligence there. Like, we don't know how long they lived in this vegan nude paradise.
So this is no, you just made a really good point. So Adam
Thank
Adam had to name every animal in the garden, right?
Because they had kangaroos mixed with, like, tigers back then. It
Yeah.
wasn't.
So it's
It wasn't
Pangea.
separated.
It's kind of like a Pangea notion, right?
Yes.
So everybody's in the same location and makes it easier. Well, that's helpful for Noah in a few hundred years when Noah gets around. They're all in the same area.
That was one of every kind, not one of every single. That was one of every kind.
well
Anyway, keep going.
of land animal that wouldn't survive the flood, right?
Yeah.
So
But
yeah.
like, they didn't have hairless cats, and then they had the fluffy cat, and then they had the tortoiseshell cat. They would have had one breed of cat that
Yeah.
could have then extended out. But anyway, keep going.
No, it's a fair point. It's a fair
It
point.
is.
There might have been a couple of different kinds, but yeah, it's a fair enough point.
Yes, but that's a different story.
Totally different story, and I have we can go into Noah later, but no, this is a good point. So he named every animal. I can't remember whether he did that before the Tree of Knowledge, right? So God gave him some tasks to do, and he ran around and did
and he
those
named
tasks.
everything, and then he's like, "You all have a pair."
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And then he got sad, and then he's like, okay, I'll make you a pair, and then he ripped his rib out, and he said, here's a woman. There you go, right?
Exactly.
And then it was the woman who got tempted by Satan, the snake,
Yes.
to eat. So it was the woman who stuffed it all up, technically, right?
Yes. Keep us away from politics and everything, because we just stuff everything up.
I have no comment. I know lots of powerful women. There's lots
I
of
was
powerful women that come on
joking.
Detonation, and I appreciate all of
The
them.
lefties will rip that sound bite. Anyway, keep going.
But no, I appreciate all of them who come on. But yeah, so that's interesting, and what I was trying to get at is, what is this knowledge then? It must be a special type of knowledge. If you're saying that
Yes, it was.
Adam could already have critical thinking skills that he could name every single animal, then it's a special type of knowledge. What is that knowledge then?
Wrong. Evil.
Evil.
Yeah, so like, it already existed, because when God made all the angels, Lucifer became jealous, and he's like, I want all the glory, and so that's why Satan exists. So obviously the ability to do wrong already existed, but on a human level, it wasn't there until the fruit was eaten, and we've inherited that since the beginning of time.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, we inherited imperfection.
Yeah. See,
So
look
God
at my forehead.
God threw out this test. We failed this test, and then you end up on this trajectory of history, right? Because really, I mean, really, like time, like civilization, as a worldly experience, as opposed to a Christian experience, began when they ate the fruit, right?
Correct.
And then that's when experience begins. That's when real civilization begins.
That's when Yeah, I think because I think Cain and Abel were born after.
Born
what we're
after.
seeing.
They
Yeah,
were born after,
they
and
were
born
born
out of. They were thrown out of the Garden of Eden.
Yeah.
They were thrown out of the Garden of Eden, born out, and you ended up with Cain being the bad guy and Abel being the good guy.
Yes.
Within a worldly context, right?
For sure. Oh no, within. I suppose because Cain worked hard to attend to his fruits and vegetables to give to God as an atonement, as a form of sacrifice, but Abel was the one who was doing what God actually asked, which was the animal sacrifice.
Yeah.
And so then he obviously got jealous again. The jealousy seems to be a common theme with sin, and and he killed his brother.
So why would God? Why, like, because this is all story stuff. Why would God? Oh.
That's all right.
No, I think the whole computer crashed.
No,
Oh, it's okay.
It happens. It goes black.
Oh,
You just
okay.
have to move the mouse every now and then.
All right. Okay, we're all good. Because it did crash on me one time.
Did it?
Yeah, it absolutely
Oh,
crashed on me.
okay.
So why would God care? Why would God run this experiment? Because as far as we're on the trajectory now, we're about to create, for example, super intelligent AI that basically could challenge God if it gets out of control, right? So he creates this being that could challenge him in the future.
You're talking about Satan.
Us. Why did Why did he create us? Why did he say, I need these bipedal ape-like creatures to run around on the earth and worship me, and or face knowledge, face the fire of humanity? I mean, why did he run this experiment?
I think because he can. I don't think the Bible gives a specific answer to why he created us. If it does, I apologize to anyone in the audience watching. I think what happened was that he was. This is what I've been told. He was alone. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, they're just there, and there's nothing else. And so then he creates the angels or whatever, and then he decides.
But isn't that like this is what I mean? Isn't this madness? Like, I mean, it depends if
Well, it's like women. Like sometimes women get lonely, and then they decide that they want to have a baby, and so they do. Like it's sort of a similar psychology.
But why the hell? Why the torment? Why not just create a utopia?
Because it makes sense in terms of reason. There is for cause and effect. There's always something. There's always a consequence for something good and for something bad. So those are just infinite laws that are written into the DNA of the universe.
All right, that's really interesting. Why are other religions wrong as opposed to this notion? So, for example, in Hinduism, you have the cycle of life. In Taoism, you have a completely different idea. Islam obviously runs in tandem with Christianity,
somewhat,
but it's very different in many ways.
Very different, yeah.
Why are these other religions wrong, and why is Christianity correct as opposed to other religions?
So are you asking me why is Christianity?
Yeah, why are you an apologist? Why are you right? Why are you right? Why is Dia Beltran correct? Why should I listen to Dia Beltran?
Yeah.
Why should I go to church? Why does Jesus matter? Why does God matter? Why does the Trinity matter? Why does any of it mean anything in the actual context against all of these other ideas?
Because Christianity is the only faith that allows you salvation in Christ, where you don't have to work your way to get into heaven. We are imperfect beings. Like we say, for example, I used to wake up at 5 a.m. every morning and go to the gym. I don't do that anymore. I haven't done that for a long time. But the point is that I used to say that I would do it, and I did it. But then eventually I stopped doing it. Do you know what I mean? It's a shitty example, but it's my example to say that we on our own do not possess the capacity to follow through on things that we claim that we're going to do. Whereas through Christ, through something bigger than us, we are able to. It's like a superpower comes over you, and then you realize that you can do more, you can be more, you can be better, and it's only possible because you have Him. You can't do it on your own. I certainly can't. I can't forgive. Like Tim Wilms, our friend, constantly says that I'm too forgiving. He says you shouldn't be so forgiving of the left. You shouldn't be so forgiving of the people who have wronged you. He sees it as a weakness, or some people see it as a weakness. I think that it's a strength. I don't want to hate people. I don't want to hate the people who hate me. I want to love them. I want to pray for them. I can't do that without God.
Do you think that you're using God as a placeholder for something you can't really describe? So you say, you do something in yourself out of your own energy, and you say, wow, I got it. I drew that energy out of, like some people, they talk about crystals, and they say, I have a crystal, and everything was my crystal. Or some people have pets, and they say, I couldn't live life without my pet because my pet gives me strength. Do you think that humans as an energy, they've captured this notion of God because they're scared of their mortality? They're scared of going into the ground and rotting and being eaten by worms. They're frightened of it, right? They're frightened of losing their consciousness. And so they make this placeholder name where they say, you know what, actually, I'm going to give this entity, whatever that is, Anki, Ra, Pluto, the Neptune, Venus, God, Yahweh, hey, whoever. Give one of these placeholder names and say that is the source of my energy, because I can't understand actually what consciousness is and why I have fluctuations in my emotional routine.
I know what you're saying. I think that could be the case for many people, and that they develop a strength on their own. But the thing with Christ is that makes it different is that there are so many good examples of people being able to forgive. Like recently, making the rounds on Facebook is this African American boy whose brother was shot by this blonde lady, and he's on the stand saying, I hold no ill will towards you. I love you. I want to hug you. He was a Christian. I really don't, and I know I don't mean this disrespectfully, but I really don't believe an atheist or a non-believer, or just someone who's not religious at all, a Muslim, a Buddhist, whatever, would be able to forgive someone killing their brother. I don't really believe that is possible with our own human ability. Corrie ten Boom was a political prisoner in the Holocaust, during the Holocaust, and her sister died, Betsy, at the hands of a particular Nazi soldier, and he then became a Christian a couple years later when she was set free, and she hated him. She had hatred for him, but she ended up forgiving him, and she only was able to do it because she had Christ. Rapists have raped young ladies. I forgot the story, but again, they were only able to forgive through Christ. I've not heard of a story of a Muslim, of an atheist, or someone forgiving.
But yeah,
it's only, I know these are anecdotes and these are stories, but if you were to put them all together to create a statistic, it'd be Christians who have the ability to forgive beyond and above any other spiritual group.
I mean, that's just saying words, because like,
okay.
well, because there's so many religions and the population is so large. I mean, you mentioned Buddhism or Hinduism. I mean, these are the largest. They
are large, yeah.
Sometimes comparable to Christianity in size, and I'm sure, even though I haven't searched for them, I'm sure you can match every single example with what you've just said with a Hindu and with a Buddhist and with a Muslim. I don't think that would be a good statement to say that Christianity trumps all of these other religions because I know about it. It's probably you don't know about it. You don't speak Arabic, you don't speak Hindi, you don't speak Thai, you don't speak Chinese, and these are huge religions, and you haven't had that cultural context where you can just say, oh yeah, Mr. Wong did this and Mr. whatever did this, and
yeah, that's a good point, but I still think.
Yeah,
I still think it's what I said. What I stated was true, but yeah, I understand.
Well, that's fine, and that's it's about faith, right? And the whole context of Christianity is all about faith. It's all about.
It's not blind faith though. A lot of logic.
Are you sure?
Yes, because what's his name?
There's a lot of errors in the Bible. There's a lot of errors in the Bible in terminology, in dates. There's a lot of misevidence. There's a lot of cities that didn't exist. There's a lot of.
I don't know about that, but I do know that there are about 44.
If I was God and I was writing a book, I would write a better book than the Bible.
Have you read the whole Bible?
I had to read it. I had to read it over and over and over again.
No. You read a different Bible. The Jehovah's Witnesses do not have the same Bible.
I've read King James. We had to read the New Testament, which is the Jehovah's Witness version, and we had to cross-check it against King James version.
Okay, so you have.
I've read the whole thing.
Okay. Because I do know that Jehovah's Witnesses have their own version,
and their own version is messed up as well. It's messed up way more. I'll argue this. It's messed up so much more, and the Mormons are even worse because they don't have just the King James version in their own Bible. They have the Book of Pearl of Great Price and all of Joseph Smith's text, and they have living prophets, and there's a whole big mess going on there.
They do have living prophets currently. They have to have 12 at a time.
Yeah, it's a huge mess, right? And then they have the big council, and then Muslims have almost the same thing. They almost essentially have living prophets. Muhammad was the last one, but it doesn't mean that, Khomeini or whatever doesn't sometimes try and use theological law to dictate stuff. But I find the Bible I find the Bible a mess historically. Now there's other people like Newton Lee who come on here. He's an evangelical Christian transhumanist, and he says it's great, but he has problems with the Bible as well. But the
There are
stories,
textual variants.
the stories are what matter. He says the stories make sense. They're what matter. What Jesus did matters.
Yes.
Jesus made everything easier by just wiping away all the Old Testament, right?
To answer your question about textual variants, there are textual variants in the Bible, but they don't actually take away from the overall conclusion and intent of the story. The textual variant will
That's
be...
the argument. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. So you know that, but you
But
can cross-check it. You can
at it-
cross-check it and then bring it back to a source and be like, oh, so that's what the intention was. It's actually, it's probably one of the what's the word? It's called textual criticism, and through that process, you can actually clean it up and be like, okay, so it's really not that inaccurate. So the inaccuracies are not that major. They don't take away from the major detail. You need Jesus to get to heaven, and those sorts of things.
Yeah, and I don't doubt that main theme. I just think, like, if it is the Word of God, and it is His book, I mean, and there's a lot of beautiful scripture. I mean, go and read
And there's a lot of messed up stuff in there too.
Go and read Psalms, go and read Psalms for some really great poetry. If you're into poetry, I mean, go and read Psalms. Or Proverbs is great too. But, I mean, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts, Romans, all that stuff is great. I mean, it's fun, right? But Revelation is kind of crazy. But my point is that if I was God and I was making the definitive book, I mean, I probably would have done a little bit of a better job correlating it with history. I mean, so it would have been easier for people to say, "Hey, this is really easy to find."
That's been done intentionally. God
to
has
test your faith.
Well, I think so. I think because first of all, we know that humans will do everything in their power to try and delete God.
This is what Jehovah's Witnesses say as well. They say that
it's true.
there's a battle between God, who's trying to write the book and tell us and lighten the path, and then Satan, who's trying to cover everything up and make it muddy the waters so that you lose your faith in God because it didn't happen in 201 BC. It happened in 202. Therefore, the whole Bible is discredited.
Exactly.
All this sort of stuff. So I get that argument.
Well, it happened in Egypt as well. Like, if you choose to believe that the Hebrews lived in Egypt for a time and that they were slaves and God set them free, and the Jews celebrate that even to this day, the Passover, then the Pharaoh of that time period said to remove all the hieroglyphics that evidenced the fact that there were ever Hebrew people living there. But then when you have investigative archaeologist reported type people like Simka Jacobovici, he does documentaries on it and he uncovers who was the pharaoh of that time frame, and I can't remember who it was, but basically that's happening now. Like I believe that there is Noah's Ark atop a mountain in Turkey or something.
Mount Ararat or something.
Oh yeah, and somehow, even though that would prove the Quran as well, it's been hidden. Like, we're not allowed to look at it. We're not allowed to see it. There's so many little tiny examples of Christian things being proven, but getting hidden away. So
it's a solid argument in the fact that there's this interdimensional war between Satan and Jesus. I mean, or Satan and God, whichever one, and that Satan is muddying the waters in order to deform the Bible. It makes sense. And like if you take that and you run with it, then I ask you, what is the core message of Christianity? What is the
salvation in Jesus Christ?
What is the elevator pitch?
Salvation in Christ. That's
So and what about the other people who? Because there's over 30,000 strands of Christianity, right?
Yeah, exactly. Which is why I'm non-denominational, because I have a mind of my own. I have critical thinking abilities, and I don't like the hollering and the waving of the Pentecostals going, oh, and I don't like their tongues of the blah, blah, blah. I don't like the concept of dancing around the church like an idiot, like some do. All of these different denominations do different things. I happen to go to a Baptist church. I don't say I'm a Baptist. I say I am a non-denominational Christian. I'll just say I'm a Christian.
Do you watch Pastor Anderson?
No.
Do you know who Pastor Anderson is? He's probably one of the biggest Baptist YouTube
Maybe I have
preachers.
heard of him. Okay.
He's very intense. very intense. But he actually was very interesting because like talking about Baptists for a second, the Baptists.
Oh, not American Baptist, Australian Baptist.
Oh, okay. Are they very different?
I feel like they are, yes.
Well, the American Baptist chapter has actually come out with a policy, which is really interesting, that they said that God will intervene before we hit superintelligence AI. He said that's what's going to happen.
That's probably true. But there are already people buying robots that they can have sex with.
Yeah, but that's not superintelligence.
No, I suppose so,
superintelligence is a phenomenon that'll go exponential, right? It'll go straight up. So the learning curve is infinite, and when it's infinite, it could probably challenge God very quickly and overtake God in a hypothetical sense.
Sure.
Because God already knows everything, I guess, and there's a limit to knowledge, right? And so this thing will go like that. It will just, and I mean, maybe there is forbidden knowledge that humans aren't supposed to know.
Oh, for sure there is.
And maybe that's
what God. The Book of Enoch. There are all these things that people don't want to read because it's extra biblical text. It's not canon, but it's there. Sorry, keep going.
Well, no, yeah. Well, I mean, maybe it's to protect ourselves, from trauma. I mean, psychological trauma. I mean, look at the rise of the modern world, where we think we're so smart, and the rise of the synthetic drug revolution, right?
Yeah.
Like pharmaceutical drugs, as you would know, is out of control. I mean, it's out of control.
Yeah, I love popping the Panadol.
Like Xanax.
It's just a bad joke.
Yeah, a whole bunch of. But yeah, so there's trauma in knowledge. There's trauma in knowing things. There's trauma in facing your mortality. And is this an argument that what God was trying to prevent us from knowing? He was trying to prevent us from knowing some of this stuff.
I think so. I think there's a time to know certain things, and there's a time not to know certain things. For example, the Book of Enoch used to be in the Bible, say 500 years ago.
It's one of the apocryphal books, yeah.
Yeah, and then they took it out.
Yep.
They took it out. They decided they
Council of Nicaea. They took it out. They took out a whole bunch. Book of Tobit, Book of Enoch, a whole bunch of them.
They took it out, and now
Book of Ruth is another one.
Didn't even know there was a book.
Yeah,
of Ruth.
Book of
You're
Ruth.
teaching me. Yeah, and now we're reaching that time again where people are saying the end times are here. There's a YouTube channel called Think About It, which I watch. Sometimes sometimes I don't want to watch it because it depresses me, and then sometimes I will watch it. But apparently all these things are happening. The Book of Revelations, it's all coming to pass.
But people have been saying this for 2,000 years.
Exactly.
Jesus brought the message of the end with him,
point.
And he said, "Brothers, the time is near. Dear Corinthians, the time is near. The time is near." Then Constantinople, was formed, and the time is near for 2,000 years. I mean.
Upon Christ's ascension into heaven, they were saying it, like right after they were saying he's coming back.
How long does it? I mean, how long is a short time?
Time to God is different to us. Like we live in the dimension that has time.
Christianity isn't yet the oldest religion. I mean, the oldest religion.
I didn't say it was.
No, I know, but like just for example, the Christianity is still like Mormonism is a very young religion. It's a spin-off. Jehovah's Witnesses are dying now, but they were a very young religion. Seventh-day Adventists are a young religion.
Very young.
All these young religions. Mainstream Christianity is old. It's an established religion. It's a big religion, but it's not yet the oldest because, like for example. The Egyptians, their religion, under Ra, essentially, that went for 3,000 years uninterrupted.
Until they
converted to Islam.
Yeah.
And a whole bunch of other things where they had a whole bunch of wars and dark ages.
But there's mystery about that. There's mystery about so you have the Egyptian gods, and then you have the Nubian gods, which are the same thing as the Egyptian gods. Then you have, and people don't realize, that all throughout South America, there's different pyramids that look similar to those ones. And so it's almost the same gods, just sort of dressed differently. And did they have technology back then that we're not aware of? Did they have a way? Did they have a breach? Did they have the Flash, going through dimensions? Were there angels? Were there giants? Like, what was happening?
Well, this is a good point because it's interesting that you bring up the Book of Enoch. I mean, the Book of Enoch.
I love the subject of the Book of Enoch.
Yeah,
people think I'm a nut, but yeah,
why?
I love the subject.
Why?
I don't know. Oh, because
it's a scary book. It's scary.
It is scary.
It's scary.
And if you believe in giants and you believe in angels, you're an idiot. That's
Well, I mean,
I mean-
that makes most of the global population an idiot because most of the global population
believes in something.
believes in some sort of angel. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're a Buddhist, which is a huge population, you believe in angels. If you're a Christian, you believe in angels. If you're a Muslim, you believe in angels.
Yeah.
Plenty of the world population and a growing number of that population believes in angels. It's a very It's a hyper minority that don't believe in any of that stuff.
But the Grand Canyon also, there are pyramid-shaped rocks, and they even found Egyptian Tutankhamun stuff in one of them.
Yeah, well,
And this stuff doesn't get reported, and we only know about it because somehow it leaks. But my point is that this goes back to the previous question you asked, Lynn, when I was saying that, well, obviously humanity is trying to hide, the existence of Noah's Ark on that mountain that you said, and all that kind of stuff. So there's things that we haven't been informed about. And so these Egyptians who had these gods that they believed in, that was more universal religion maybe than we think. Possibly. But I'm obviously speculating.
Yeah,
I
well,
can't.
but I mean, that's what I mean. It's the older religion than Christianity.
Very old religion, yeah.
And
Ra.
yeah, and the Christianity is really interesting because it rapidly rose through the Roman Empire from Constantine. After he converted, he gave the imperial system over, which was the imperial messaging system. Rome had a really good road system. And then, bam, Christianity just exploded out of nowhere.
Because they saw him rise, and they saw his miracles. Oh, this chair's really wobbly. They saw his miracles, and so obviously they were going to believe what they saw, because at that time frame, you could see to believe. Now, you don't see to believe. You believe through faith and through an internal experience.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a confusing subject because
it goes up and down because we can go into so many tangents.
Yeah, yeah. And I want to go back to Book of Enoch for a second.
Go ahead.
Because I think the Book of Enoch is really fun. And the Book of Enoch would imply, if not an angel theory, which is what you're talking about, which is kind of God assisting, it's this Promethean idea where this is the Book of Enoch is essentially Promethean. That's what it is. It's the Watchers come down and they
copulate.
Well, they copulate and they give the technology that's in their heads over to the population, just like Prometheus gave fire to man and he changed everything. These Watchers essentially gave mankind the tools of iron making, writing.
And they gave women makeup.
Women makeup.
Yeah.
That struck me massively when I read
weird?
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
That was huge.
Which means
They
that makeup
beautified
came
the eyes.
before Egypt.
They
because
beautified the eyes.
They did. See, it's all I do. I wear eyeliner, so it's thanks to these sinful fallen angels that I have eyeliner.
It's a very interesting. It's a very interesting point that you mentioned there about beautifying the eyes. I thought it struck me as well. I was like, wow, that's a.
In the Book of Enoch, it also says that the angels, the fallen angels, taught humans to abort. One of the angels. There was 7 lead angels.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, I know
Well,
this is where we're not even talking like classic Christianity now. We're sort of gone on to the more UFO type Christianity.
Well, yeah, but it's important. But
it's interesting.
This is all part of Christian history, and whether or not the Nicene the Nicene unit, the council wants to. They defined what went into the Bible and what was left out. So
they
basically,
did, but I'm
the
sure
council
God everything's in God's control. That saying. So I'm sure it was.
I mean, if you were sitting there, I mean, you would have had to feel the Holy Presence, the Holy Spirit in the room, right?
Yeah, but I wasn't there though, so I can't comment on something that happened in the Council of Nicaea. It's like me commenting on what you ate for breakfast this morning. I can't do it. I wasn't there. It's none of my business. It's done.
But that's my point. It's like everything is built off faith. It's all built off layers of just, okay, that's what it is, therefore I believe the next thing, and you work up to this point of this guy, his name's Jesus, and he came around, he turned, I mean, if I'm going to worship...
he's a cool guy.
If I'm going to worship a god, I mean, water to wine is your first miracle, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to admit, I'm a bit of a whiny,
I'm
gonna admit, like that's a pretty
He
good.
can walk on water. He can make blind people see. He can make people who are fishing get lots of fish. And those are just the miracles that we're aware of. Apparently, there are many, many, many that were not documented.
Bring people back from the dead.
Lazarus.
Yeah, and the little girl. Many, yeah. And he told his disciples to tell about many of his miracles. He made a point about being modest about.
Well, even the Quran has one of his miracles that isn't in the Bible. He turned a rock into a dove.
Yeah, the clay thing when he went out into the desert, right, to face the devil for 40 days and 40 nights, right? Didn't he do a whole bunch of stuff out there? But just interesting stuff. I mean, it's an interesting story, but again, it's a story. It's unverifiable, apart from the Bible, which it's self-verification.
Exactly. I was about to say that. Like the beginning story of Genesis to the ending story of Revelation, all the consistent theme is the Jewish people, God, Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically everything that happened in the Old Testament is like a trailer to the movie, and Jesus Christ is the movie. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's the best way I can put it. Yeah.
It's all building up, and then
it's all building up. Whereas the Quran was written quite differently. Like they were following him around and documenting his life as it happened. Whereas the Bible was written like only like 60, 70 years after he ascended back into heaven. So, and there's also 500, there's 500 people seeing him ascend into heaven. Are 500 people having a mass delusion, or 500 people literally seeing him? Like, that's a lot of corroboration.
That's when...
Are you stuck?
No, he said... I'm just trying to think, I'm trying to remember. Is it when he was on the cross, or when he was in the...
When he ascended.
Yeah, because this is the part I always get confused on, because Jehovah's Witnesses are different here. I can't remember. What are you guys? It's on the cross, right? He died and then he went up, right?
No, he died on the cross.
Yeah.
Then he was buried
in
for 3 days,
tomb,
and then
he ascended.
Yeah.
Well, actually, then he went down to hell, right?
Apparently, yeah. He was on Earth for 40 days doing something. I don't really know. I'm not the best Christian in terms of the infinite knowledge. But,
he went to hell for 3 days, and then he battled with Satan, and I think he came back up. And anyway, I don't know either. Like again, because J-Dubs have a different conception.
This is why I have debates on my channel, and like, because I like to learn as well. And I have a Bible study tomorrow. We're doing the Gospel of John. So
John?
Yeah, that's the best place to start a Bible study, because you get to know, like, about the Samaritan woman. You know how Jesus went to that prostitute. No, she wasn't a prostitute. She was just a slut. She had 5 different husbands, and she was a Samaritan, and it was in the middle of the day, because she didn't want anyone to see her in the middle of the day. It's the hottest time of the day. And then he said, "Woman, did you know that there is eternal water that can never make you thirst again?" And she's like, "Where can I find this water?" Not realizing that he means like eternal life. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're just lovely stories, and they make us humans better. And if you don't follow them, if you choose to turn your back on them, then that's fine. You can do that. If you want to have sex outside of marriage, if you want to commit sodomy, if you want to steal, if you want to lie, steal. Ha ha. No.
Do you see transhumanism, which is the...
You need to explain what that means specifically.
It's the application of bettering humanity through advancing technology.
So artificial humans, like hybrid.
Well, you know, like cryonics, space colonization, longevity, Neuralink, like uploading your mind to a supercomputer.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Well, you don't like that?
No, that doesn't sound right. I feel like God has created us for a specific way, a specific purpose, and he's gradually gotten like in the old times, like in the Adam and Eve times, people lived to like 900 years. Now we live to about 120 years.
Well, he limited it after the flood, right?
Yes, but even Noah lived to like the 600s. It was still relatively a long period of time. So with each and every generation, we're obviously not supposed to live that long anymore. We're not granted the same blessing. So by messing with humanity, with the transhumanism artificially or whatever, you're sort of going against what God has designed. And also I
like it you brought that up, because but Noah was already like 600 when he went into the ark, and when he came out, he died after that. And Nimrod made whatever, but God limited.
That's right.
But God limited but God limited it after that. But that's why Noah was so. But you say that extending life out past that 120 limit is challenging God directly?
A little bit. Like, look, I haven't really thought about it that much, but we were talking before about angels and humans, and somewhere in the Bible it says... Sorry, I should stop reading the chat. Somewhere in the Bible it says, as it was in the times of Noah, so it shall be again. So in the times before Noah. So that the times of Noah is the antediluvian era. And during the antediluvian era, there were hybrid things. There were things that were against God. So God destroys the earth with a flood based on the fact that there were other types of humanity that shouldn't have existed. They were corruptions. They weren't God's direct design. They weren't human. They weren't like us, where what is supposed to exist. And so by that happening, you're bringing about revelation. You're bringing about what happened in the antediluvian era. Does that answer your question?
Well, that does answer my question. And so basically, transhumanism does directly challenge God because it puts. You're saying that
you're making hybrids again. You're creating
Yeah, well, you're trying to extend life to a point where death becomes irrelevant. I mean, this show is making death irrelevant or whatever.
But I'm not gonna lie, I wouldn't mind like someone creating something that makes maybe women be able to have babies.
What about an artificial?
A little further on.
Artificial. Well, there's delayed fertility advantage. That's a new theory that's come out, where you extend. You basically. What about artificial wombs?
Artificial wombs. Well, I like the idea of an artificial womb if it means no babies will be aborted. So the woman that says I don't want this baby, then they can take out the zygote and then pop it in the artificial womb, and then someone can keep that baby. So I'm not too horribly fussed by that concept.
Is it go against God?
I don't know. I think cloning does.
Why would cloning go against God?
Because we are not God, so we shouldn't be redesigning humans. We already have the capacity.
Should we be curing cancer?
Sure.
Why?
Because that's not prolonging life in an unnatural way.
Okay. So should we do anything apart from praise Jesus? I mean, what's the point of science and technology and progress? And wasn't the Dark Age the zenith of Christianity, and therefore that's where we should be? I
think if you have to have a blood transfusion because you have to, then you should do it. I don't think we should just accept our death. I think if you have faith, you can probably be healed from it as well. And I'm not talking about healers that they're morons. I don't even know how much of that is real. I'm sure some of it is real, but I think you really have to pick and choose. But I think it's good to have technology. I think that's all very permissible. But I also think that we need to not play with God. Don't overstep the limit.
And do you think God will punish us for trying to overstep it, or if we do eventually overstep that limit?
Well, we will be punished anyway. The flood was the first punishment. The second punishment will be the destruction of the earth, which will be happening in 10 years' time, apparently.
But but this sounds, again, it just sounds like a psychopath God, because...
No, he's not. It's been written. We already know. It's in the book of Revelation.
But he created this whole mad system with good and evil, with the devil, with a tiny little planet.
Good and evil
with
is
people
inevitable.
on it, and he's like, all right, let's run this out and see what happens. I mean, it sounds kind of dumb to me.
Well, you're not God. Maybe he thinks you're dumb.
No, I hope he does, because I am dumb. I'm stupid as they come. So,
Well, we're all stupid compared to Christ. When God talks to us, when Jesus came on earth to talk to us, he didn't talk to us in a sciencey way. He spoke to us in parables.
Yes.
He spoke to us in parables because it's easier for our brains to understand stories rather than maths. Someone tries to give me maths, I will tune right out. Someone talks to me science, I will tune right out. Someone talks to me in a story, I'll be interested.
Yeah.
It's we're dumb.
We're dumb.
Yeah, God created the stars. The angels that came down on earth and sinned against God and did the stuff that they did, they understood things that we don't know. Then because of that stuff that you said before about metal and all that kind of stuff, those were tricks, we benefited from their society, sort of thing. So We are dumb.
Yeah, we're done. We couldn't even figure that out until the Watchers came down.
Yeah. We are
for example.
communicated with. We are communicated through stories. That's the God can only communicate to us through parables.
Yeah, it's super.
It's like we're 5-year-olds.
So we're 5-year-olds could create.
We're probably
God.
dumber than Adam and Eve.
Well, my granddad always said that, and he's still alive actually, and he's still a devout Jehovah's Witness. But he always said that you know, Adam and Eve were perfect, and we're getting more imperfect as we go along. So it's perfection, and then every generation after that is just more and more imperfect.
He's right.
That's what he always said.
No, he's right about that. Like, if you think about Adam and Eve as the first perfect human beings, and then they had all these different kids that obviously had to have sex with each other to make the population keep going. People think it was just Adam and Eve, and then Cain and Abel, and then Seth, and then where are all the girls? They obviously had daughters. But anyway, as each generation goes by, the Olympian athlete superhuman that they were has degenerated into this. Like, yeah. So, you know, we have people who need gluten-free and fructose and veganism and all this different.
But isn't that just because we have so many more options now and so many more different?
But
There's so many more ingredients in our food now that people are.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, no, that's a factor as well. I think, but I also think that but I also think it's years and years of devolution.
Going down.
Yeah.
From perfection, from a Christian, because we're talking from a Christian perspective.
From a Christian perspective.
Yeah, because Adam and Eve were perfect, and then everything after that.
They had, like, at the age of 92, Eve probably had a tight ass and still looked hot.
So you know, going off this idea, if they didn't eat of the fruit of the tree of knowledge and they obeyed God's commands,
we probably wouldn't exist.
What would it? Sure, but what would the society have looked like?
Everyone would be naked and happy, singing like this: "Kumbaya, my lord, kumbaya."
Like all the time.
I don't know, and I think we would have all been one race. I think I could be wrong about that. Eve might have been black, Adam might have been white. I don't know, but yeah, I don't think society would look the way it does now because, you know, the Colombians only exist because the Spanish people raped the Native Americans.
You mentioned talking about race. You mentioned I think like the Seth was like a red-skinned person, wasn't he? And
red-haired.
Yes, like there was like it talks about them all being like all the sons being different races, but that didn't help.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It does mention somewhere in the Bible there that they
the Tower of Babel. I know.
Well, the Babel was the languages because even though there were different races, they all had one language and they had one culture and one structure.
That's true.
And that's why they worked together to build a tower that would challenge God, right?
Yeah, and then God's like, haha.
And he confused the language.
Yes.
And language is a technology. And once they were confused the language, then it's like, how do we coordinate? And they all split up and they spread all over the earth.
¿Cómo vamos a comunicar? Yo no sé.
See, exactly right. So, you know, that can get pretty frustrating pretty quickly, especially if you're trying to build a tower to challenge God's authority.
Es lo que es.
Yeah.
That's what Maddie always says. That's what it says on his YouTube channel. Es lo que es. Sorry, keep going.
That's all right. Yeah, no, that's all right. And it's Spanish, right?
Yes.
Cool. And where did you learn that?
My whole life at home.
Yeah.
In Spanish school every Saturday. I had to learn Spanish for 3 hours every.
What
Saturday.
is it like? What is it like living in a two-dimensional world? Because I know that increases your IQ definitely, and it increases your perception on the world.
Yeah, I'm smarter than most.
No, because you get to look at a multi. You know how one word sounds in one way, and you know how people think about it in the other way, in the other. You know, and you think in these two different.
Well, I had no choice. I was born listening to Spanish, and so that's what I spoke. And so, whilst my language at home is Spanish, my friends and all my experiences are completely Australian. But when I go home or when we have events and stuff like that with my family, it's very Spanish, it's very Colombian. Like, no one else I know celebrates New Year's by stuffing 12 grapes in their mouth. Like, you have to be Spanish to do that.
Yeah, sure. And do you read in Spanish, like the Bible, for example? Do you read the Bible in Spanish?
Not anymore, but like I can read in Spanish and it's not an issue.
Would it change the perception of how you read the Bible?
No.
It doesn't?
No,
so when you read it in English and you read it, yeah, I know, but like, do you think about For example, you read
Do I think in Spanish?
no, do you,
No.
do you like you read a parable, let's say
Mm-hmm.
the Samaritan woman or whatever, and then you read that in English or in Spanish. I mean, do you come to different conclusions or think about it in completely different ways or contexts, or is it just the same thing?
I feel like it's the same thing, only maybe you have a realization in one language, and then you have a realization in another language. Like but it'd hit you the same way spiritually. Yeah. Do you need to
Alright.
go soon because you have another show?
Well, yeah, I've got to run.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, dear Beltran, for coming on. I'm very pleased to just talk about Christianity.
I feel like we literally just sort of barely touched the surface.
Yeah.
I feel like do you want to come on my show in the next couple of weeks and then we continue the conversation?
Yeah, I'd be happy to talk about just to talk about Christianity.
Because everyone is always like, steel!
Oh, yeah.
We're steel! We love steel!
He's over at Detonation. Watch Detonation so you can get all your latest transhumanist updates. But yeah, well, I'm very interested, and bring on if you can bring on people who can talk Christianity, a lot, maybe like ecumenical stuff or something. Bring them on. To send them over this way, because I want to get to know all the religions ultimately. We had a huge religious debate where we had a Buddhist, a couple of Mormon transhumanists, a whole bunch of other people and we were all debating about religion. And it was really fun, and we had a lot of fun.
It is fun to talk about religion.
Yeah, it's a really good. This existential stuff, I'm very interested to see how people.
I didn't want to talk about the angels. That was weird. I like talking about it, but I didn't want to talk about it on camera.
Well, we all know
It's
that
done now.
we all know that you know the apocryphal books now. So
Yeah. Well, I did.
that's good. I mean, I wouldn't respect you at all.
In Christians.
I wouldn't respect you at all. Like if I was like, what's that? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I'm a minority in Christians because very few Christians believe the angels and that they were giants. Like it's really, I'm in a minority.
How can you be a Christian and not believe basically the Noah story? Because that's what it was. The Noah was about the Nephilim, and they were running amok.
Yeah, but a lot of people don't believe that. They take it differently. They think it's the descendants of Cain that were running amok.
What, were they like midgets, or were they just normal people?
Well, they were taller than the Seth side.
Then they're giants.
Yeah,
I mean, like,
but they don't come from angels, fallen angels.
okay, I understand.
Yeah.
So some sort of genetic mutation.
I think so, but like, I don't know. I think because God locked up the angels under the river Euphrates, like the 300 watchers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, we're getting off topic, but yeah, I'd love to keep talking about it.
Yeah, no, it's really good, and I just learned a lot about Christianity. I think
I hope
if,
something resonated with our conversation.
if I died right now,
You go to hell. No, I'm kidding.
I possibly. I mean, there's a random number generator, and I'm sure that possibly like I could end up in hell. I mean, that I don't see why I wouldn't end up in hell. I mean, that's kind of a scary thought, right? But
It is.
at the same time, I'd probably have as much chance of going to hell as I just would of going to heaven, right? And or like probably the more normal option is probably either infinite nothingness, non-consciousness, or this other option of just rebirth, recycle, and become new. Because until we understand consciousness, it's kind of all up there, right?
Yeah.
That's why I'm confused. Like the main confusion comes from the fact that we do not understand consciousness,
Yeah.
and that consciousness is something that's massively spurred on by the religious notions of Christians and Muslims and Buddhists. Because their sell point, their sales pitch is that we understand what consciousness is, and it's called the soul. And then there's a whole.
I think the word soul and life is interchangeable.
Really? But what about life? Is everything, right? Life is animals and plants. Do they all have souls?
Yeah, but we're humans, so it's slightly different.
Why is it different? Because we have a higher degree of consciousness?
Yes.
Why does that mean anything?
Well, because we're the only beings that can make the decision to accept the sacrifice Christ made. My cat, who I love, like, she can't go to heaven. She can't say, I want to commit my life to Christ. She's a cat. I mean, I'm happy.
She probably preferred being in Egypt when she was a god.
Yeah, exactly.
Cats are very interesting because you know they just seem
cat.
to survive. I mean, there were gods in Egypt. You know, people love cats. Now they have the internet. Like the internet is full of cats. I mean, cats just rule everything. And
I'm gonna be a cat lady.
Dogs are close behind.
Yeah.
But anyway, thank you, dear. Thank you very much. Send me Christians who want to come on and convince me.
I might be able to help you with that too.
Why Christianity rocks. You know, why Jesus is the man and we should all follow him down the through the straight and narrow. Yeah, send him on.
If anyone is interested in the subject of humans copulating with angels, I have on a playlist on my channel with Tim Alberino, who is a ufologist and an angel expert. So it's a 4-part interview, but you guys might like that if anyone found that interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say don't go there, go there. You know, explore all the options. But you know, I think I don't know, Christianity. I don't know.
It's a lot more interesting than people I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dear Beltran, thank you very much. She has a YouTube
Steele.
channel. Mine way too small to promote her. Detonation, more coming to all this week. Detonation, putting death out of business.
Margot.